The Dragon's Return, Chapter 31, Lamia, Part 3. When Arthur found the trail, it raised both hope and dread in his chest. Hope, because he knew that fabric. It was Merlin's cloak, or pieces of it anyway. Dread, because it was deliberately torn and tied here. She was leaving them a trail to find. Something wasn't right. "You're sure?" Agravain asked. Arthur was beginning to regret bringing him along. It felt almost as if he was dragging his feet in the search for the others.
"It's from the cloak I gave her. I'd know it anywhere,"
Arthur assured his uncle. They'd left Gaius behind in Longstead for the sake of speed, and so he could care for those afflicted by the creature, the Lamia, a creature that could drive men mad and suck the life from them with a single embrace. But what did it do to women? He hadn't thought to ask that of Gaius, too worried about actually going to look for Merlin and the knights. At least she wasn't alone. She had her maid with her. It took maybe an hour to spot the old crumbling fortress. It was the only standing structure in the area, and Arthur had a feeling. He was proved right when they found 5 horses at the entrance. 5 horses. Lancelot pointed out, patting Gawain's horse Rebel on the neck. There should be 6.
"Merlin's horse isn't here,"
Arthur said, that dread dropping back into his stomach again. Something was very wrong.
"Everyone on guard," he ordered, drawing his own sword. "We don't know what could be waiting here."
The others drew weapons and headed inside, pausing to light a torch. The decrepit castle was quiet as the grave it now served as. There were bones scattered around, old and covered in lichen and dust. Arthur was terrified of what he might find. A flickering light down a hall was the first sign of life, and they headed for it, but found only Elian. He was out cold, in the same condition as the men at Longstead. "That thing is here," Sir Galahad pointed out.
"We need to find the others, and fast. Uncle, Sir Boris, wait here with Elian,"
Arthur ordered and took off at a run, Lancelot, Galahad, and Quentin hot on his heels. They found Gawain rather quickly in the same state as the others. They left Quentin with him, still looking for the rest. That was when they heard the scream, a familiar, feminine scream. Arthur ran full out, rounding the corner by himself. The sight he found was grisly. There was a creature. Its torso was that of a young woman. She might have been pretty at one point, but the scales that erratically covered her body and the long, forked, flickering tongue spoiled whatever illusion of beauty she'd once had. Where her legs should have been was a curling, coiling snake's tail. A vast majority of it appeared to be wrapped around something. Arthur threw his sword with all his strength behind it. The creature screamed, and the coils of snakeskin reflexively loosened. Arthur caught a glimpse of raven hair and pale skin. "Merlin!" he called out. She didn't move. Lancelot ran forward, pinning the beast with Arthur's sword and swinging his own at the thing's neck. A soft thud sounded as the creature's head bounced to the floor and it went limp. Arthur raced forward and pulled the coils of snake off Merlin. She winced back, then focused on him, her eyes a little out of focus, as though she'd hit her head. "Arthur?" she asked, managing to focus on him.
"I'm here,"
he assured her. She leaned forward, resting her head against his armor. She was shaking. Galahad passed them. "Leon and Percival are here," he called, "same as the others." "She did that to them." "It was like they'd gone mad," Merlin croaked. Arthur gently helped her out of the coils of the snake. She was bruised. There was a burn on her arm, minor, but charring her sleeve. It looked as though someone had seized her by the throat as well, and her voice was rough, as though speaking hurt. When she stepped, her left ankle tried to give out on her. Only Arthur's intervention kept her upright. He scooped her off her feet entirely.
"I've got you. Gaius is in Longstead. We can make it back there before sundown,"
he assured. To the others, he called out,
"Get those affected to the horses. We leave within the hour."
Arthur didn't let Merlin out of sight, even as he helped tie the unconscious knights to their mounts. Merlin eyed them warily, if with a bit of a bleary eye. She rode with him. He was worried that in her state she might fall off her horse if she tried to ride alone. He pushed them as fast as he dared, and they reached Longstead just after sundown. Merlin insisted that Gaius look after the knights first. Agravain and the other knights Arthur had brought with him went off to sleep, but Arthur couldn't leave Merlin, not after this. He'd come too close to losing her twice now in barely 2 months. Gaius made him wait outside while he examined her for injury. Mary, the woman who'd brought the news in the first place, had offered her home so Merlin could have privacy, as the others had all been male. It took what felt like hours for Gaius to emerge from the small, low house.
"How is she?"
Arthur asked. "She's had worse," Gaius said in a way that did nothing to assuage Arthur's worry.
"Gaius."
"She's got a sprained ankle, head-to-toe bruising, a burn on her left arm. It's not too bad. It should heal without a scar, and her lip is split, and her throat is bruised. Her lip is also split, and it will take time for the bruise on her face to go down." Gaius listed off. Arthur frowned.
"The Lamia did all that to her?"
he asked. Gaius looked around as though checking they were alone. "I don't know that it did," he said, and Arthur frowned. "The legends say that when encountered with a woman, the Lamia would kill them outright or use them to create more Lamia. As I told you, they were produced by mingling the blood of a girl with the blood of a serpent."
"You don't think—"
Arthur asked, and Gaius shook his head. "Believe me, we would know by now if it had succeeded. A Lamia made with Merlin's blood would be nigh unstoppable, likely more akin to a dragon than a serpent." Gaius said, lowering his voice. Arthur nodded, then frowned.
"But if the Lamia didn't do all that to her, then who did?"
he asked. "The more extensive bruising was most likely the Lamia. You said it had her as a snake traps its prey. That would have caused a good majority of the larger bruises and scrapes. I believe the wrenched ankle was Lamia as well. It would have had to catch her somehow. But," Gaius shook his head, "the burn, the split lip, and the bruised throat, those are injuries I do not believe the creature can be blamed for."
"But then—"
"There is something else, sire," Gaius said, cutting him off. "She asked if we were here because Rose managed to get word to Camelot. Merlin sent Rose to warn us of the Lamia almost 2 full days ago. We should have at least crossed paths with her on the road."
"But we didn't. I'll organize search parties as soon as we reach Camelot. I'll also ask the village elder if they can spare anyone to search the woods around Longstead for her,"
Arthur assured. Gaius nodded and turned to head back into the hut. Arthur caught his arm.
"You never answered my question. If the Lamia didn't do this, who did?"
"Only Merlin knows for sure. All I know is the marks around her throat were put there by human hands," Gaius said darkly. "She'll sleep until morning. I need to check on the others." With that, the physician pulled away and retrieved his bag from the hut before heading to the hall where the knights and villagers lay recovering from what the Lamia had done. Arthur sat on a stone next to the door of the hut where Merlin lay and began to think. He didn't like the idea that crossed his mind. The knights had been the only people with Merlin since she'd sent Rose off to try and warn Camelot. Of course, she wouldn't have gone with her. She'd never abandoned her friends, but the marks she now bore spoke of more than abandonment from the men he'd sent to protect her. He buried his head in his hands.